Hello, and welcome to the Facebook Live event of the Collier County Public Library's virtual book club. This month we are discussing
my choice. It was Her Hidden Genius by Marie Benedict.
Oh, and by the way, we are Anna and
Irene Johnson.
Hello.
We are super excited to be here with you guys today to discuss this book. You want to start with our overall kind of impressions?
Yeah, let me put this slide up. This is a picture of the author, Marie Benedict, and the cover of the book. Let's see, overall impressions. The subject matter was very compelling. It's about a woman named Rosalind Franklin, who was a real person. She was a chemist, a scientist, a physiologist in the 1950s in England. And she did some of the groundbreaking research that helped people discover she discovered the structure of DNA. And I thought that the book was, I liked it. I thought it was an interesting topic. Sometimes the science got a little heavy for me, but all in all, I thought it was a decent read. What did you think?
So I picked the book because, like you said, the plot was very intriguing to me. I was like, women who have done something, because it's based on a true story.
Yes.
She actually existed, and most of the writing in this book is based off of true historical, with a little bit of fiction put in there to give a little bit more of a story. And the whole idea of a female discovering DNA, I had no idea before I read this book.
Neither did I.
But I also struggled with the book in parts when it got into the science. It would get a little
Detailed,
yes, and you'd get a little bogged down in it. And so sometimes, I'll be honest, I skimmed a little. But overall, I thought the book was pretty good.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get to the questions that you posted.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So the first one is, before reading Her Hidden Genius, had you heard of Rosalind Franklin? And we already have both said that.
Nope. I had no idea who she was. And this is perfect for, by the way, Women's History Month.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Because it's Women's History Month, and this is a perfect read for us, because
yes,
we're discussing a woman that really was amazing that we all probably don't know about.
No, that's true. In fact, my husband, when I told him I was reading about the woman who discovered the structure of DNA, he says, "Oh, wasn't that Watson and Crick?" I'm like, he knew it. He knew the men that won the Nobel Prize for it, but
that stole all of her research.
Yes.
We'll get there.
We'll get there in a minute. So what, if anything, did you know about the history of DNA, and how did the book affect your understanding of that history?
I didn't know a lot about the history of DNA. Obviously, back in science class, we learned it was a helix, so we saw pictures of it. And so I was very familiar with maybe common knowledge of DNA, because I learned that when we were in high school. And basically what we use it for now. But back then, when they knew nothing or how they actually came about it, I had no knowledge at all.
No, me either. Nothing at all.
And how did the book expand my knowledge? I mean, immensely. I mean, it was huge. I mean, it was definitely a little miniature science lesson in some ways.
Yes, a large science lesson. And a big history lesson, too.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. Question 2. Compare Rosalind's experience in France to her experiences in England. What was the biggest difference you noticed between each culture's expectations for scientists and women? So let's give it a little bit of background here. In the beginning of the book, Rosalind, who is English and also ethnically Jewish, decides to go work in Paris at a chemistry laboratory. And she works there for several years, I believe. And but then her parents are urging her to come back to England, so she finally does so. Although there were other extenuating factors, which I'm not going to spoil for you if you haven't read the book yet. So the differences between France and England, do you want to take a crack at that?
Sure. I really enjoyed the chapters when she was in France, because it was definitely about camaraderie. It was about all the scientists, they kind of worked together. They were definitely more open to women scientists. They were more respectful of each other. And if they were calling each other by their first names, which they were on a first name basis in France, it was out of camaraderie. It was definitely not out of being disrespectful to the fact that she was a doctor.
Correct.
England, on the other hand, was very pretentious.
Yes.
Was very much a man's world. and was very much almost very derogatory towards her.
Derogatory. I felt she was demoralized as well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, she was working at King's College, I believe it was.
Yes.
When she was doing her groundbreaking research into the structure of DNA. And there were some men there who took up calling her Rosie as a nickname when it was not her nickname at all. And they certainly didn't call her doctor.
And
No.
she actually said, "Don't call me Rosie.
Don't call
I
me
don't
Rosie."
like it, and I don't like being referred to it." And they insisted on doing it anyway.
Right.
Um,
And they would all go to lunch, and they would all go into the men's cafeteria where she could not go, and so she would have to go eat lunch by herself.
and we all know in work, a lot of networking and groundbreaking information is relayed when you're working in that type of information in the setting of lunch,
Right.
in the setting of brunch. And you know, when they were in France, they would all go out to lunch together. They were all together as one unit. They did not separate men and women. They were much more open. They even made like their special brews with their instruments,
yeah,
which I thought was
yeah.
kind of fun. They made their own coffee.
They made coffee
using-
with the scientific instruments. And I bet it was good coffee.
I bet it was good
Yeah.
coffee because they had like the perfect measurements and everything.
Yes.
So France was definitely better. However, there was still a tone of misogynism throughout the book, regardless of where she was. I still think that there was still a tone of you're still a woman and you're not as good as a man.
Right. Okay. So question 3. Rosalind asserts early on that marriage and science are not meant to coexist for working women. Do you think that idea is a product of her time period or her personality? Does she reevaluate it throughout the book, and if so, how? I think it was more of her personality, although it is very difficult for a woman to balance relationships and a career. I mean, simply because things have changed obviously since the 1950s.
Exactly.
And but I mean, you still have, if you're a mother, you still have children that you're worrying about, and it's just there's more for a woman to do if she has a family.
I think also it was her personality in that she wanted to give 100% to science.
Yes.
She really felt that there was value in it and that she was giving to the greater good. And so I think there were times in the novel, and you'll see them, where she kind of debated about having relationships and
Yes.
whether or not you could have a relationship and also science. And I think the way some of those things worked out for her, she became almost jaded. And so I think some of the opportunities that maybe later in life for her to reevaluate, I think they were through a spectrum of an unfortunate circumstance for her, and I don't think she was ever able to get over that.
No, I agree with you, and it's such a shame because she was a brilliant person, and being able to share that with somebody is something that would have been wonderful for her, but it just
And I
didn't
think
happen.
finding another scientist that was a man that she could talk to at that level and had that relationship.
And
I
yet
think
there
it
would
have been-
always be that shadow of, is he going to steal my research from
Exactly.
me?
Yes.
Or am I just going to be, Mrs. Dr. So-and-so, and he's going to get all the accolades, and I'm just going to be the wife of a scientist?
Exactly.
Yes.
The wife of so-and-so.
Yes.
And I think the 50s, obviously, that time period, it was very, and a lot of times just looked upon for women to work, period. Especially if you were married or you had children, it was assumed that your career would end when you did that.
Right.
You had a career until you
Right.
got married or until you had children, and then it was time for you to stay home and be in the kitchen.
I mean, that continued even into the 60s and 70s. I had an elementary school teacher who left halfway through the year to have a baby, and she just stopped teaching.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that was the late 70s. I'm giving away my age, I'm sorry.
And I think we've come so far in our culture that now it's a choice.
Right.
You get to make those choices and you have the options, where back then I don't think you could have it without having the stigmatism on you.
Right. Right.
She would have been considered a spinster.
Spinster, yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, question 4. How does Rosalind's Jewish identity shape her behavior and priorities throughout the book? How are she and her family still contending with the events of World War II? So the first one, how does her identity shape her behavior and priorities? What did you think?
I think in some ways, I wish that they had talked more about her ethnicity in the book, because I don't know that it was a huge character shaping for her.
Yeah, I mean, she was a professed atheist, so any shaping of her behavior came purely out of ethnic.
Yep, absolutely. Not out of the religion.
Faith.
Yeah, not out of faith.
Yeah.
She was respectful to her parents.
Yes.
And practiced, with the family when they had holidays and things. But she was definitely, she was not Jewish in the sense of faith at all.
No.
She was definitely 100% science.
Mm-hmm.
I think in some ways, because of the life that she led, her family was very wealthy.
Yes.
And they basically did a lot of philanthropic work, and that was kind of what you were supposed to do, and that's what they wanted you to do, basically when you were out on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in that way they were really saved from what really happened during World War II. I don't know that they were impacted as much as many other Jewish families.
Well, the fact that they were a Jewish family living in England saved them from the horrors of what happened in the continent of Europe. But they were definitely working through the 50s and well into, I'm sure, probably the 60s, working with, helping people
Who suffered.
who suffered from the war. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right. Question 5. What do you think of Rosalind's approach to lab safety? How do you think things have changed for modern scientists?
She had no regard for lab safety.
No.
She kind of poo-pooed it and just...
She had a monitor that she was supposed to wear all the time that kept track of radiation levels, and she would often slip it into the garbage if the radiation levels got too high, so they would not keep her out of the lab.
She basically
Ignored it.
Yeah, pretty much didn't have any safety whatsoever.
No. She was so focused on her work, she didn't want safety to get in her way.
And I think what has changed, obviously we have OSHA, we have all these where you would never get away from being on a job and doing that type of reckless behavior anymore.
No,
There's no way.
No.
But I think a lot of it came with what, I don't really think there's any repercussions for this, which she later on in life found out.
Right.
There were some repercussions for it, but I think as we learned things, we've also gotten more protective. But even think of like 9/11, we didn't realize how badly that would affect the firefighters and the cancer that it would cause for them just being on and around that amount of burning rubble and all the toxicity that was in there. And now we know, but that wasn't that long ago.
So no, I mean, we learn as we go along.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But she basically didn't have any regard for safety at all.
No.
At least not for her own personal safety.
And even her, Ray, who was her assistant, she didn't really have a regard for his either. Because she didn't really enforce it.
No, she did not. That's true.
So it wasn't just her. I think she really didn't, she thought it was overrated and didn't really enforce it at all.
Correct.
She definitely was an amazing woman.
Yeah.
I think the book...
Brilliant.
I mean, to read her book and to know somebody, and to know that back in the 50s there was a woman that, we didn't get to the part of her research, which you'll find out it's a spoiler, and we'll talk about that in our next discussion.
Yes, so let me take us to the next slide, which talks about our Zoom conversation that we're going to have next week. So if you send me an email, anna.karras@colliercountyfl.gov, I will send you back an invitation. So we're going to meet next week on the 29th at 2 o'clock. And we'll all meet via Zoom, and Irene and I will both be there.
Absolutely.
And a bunch of you will be there, and we'll talk about the book in detail. No spoilers, full disclosure on everything.
Absolutely. It will be a lot of fun. And I think we'll be able to dive into a lot more of the root and the meat of this book.
Right, yeah.
So you'll enjoy that.
Yes. So please do join us next week. We look forward to seeing you. And I guess that's about where we're going to end this then.
And you'll also find out what our next book will be.
Oh yes, that's right. Yes, we'll tell all of the members a sneak peek of what's to come in April.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Bye for now.